1 week to rule them all. 1 week to find them. 1 week to bring them all, and in the darkness find them. Season 2 of The Rings of Power is coming, and it can hardly be a surprise. I have no love for the series. As I've mentioned in other videos, I think it failed both as a series, but especially as a Tolkien series. It has barely anything to do with his works, and in my mind, it should not be allowed to be even associated with Tolkien. It's something that became clear to me even before episode 1 aired, as I made breakdowns of everything in an 8-part series titled Everything Wrong with the Rings of Power. And now the time has come to continue that series before season 2 airs. Now, there's a lot of die-hard fans of the Rings of Power that just come here to this channel to dislike my videos so the algorithm won't spread it out to more people. Some of these fans just love the series, and others just love the political propaganda in it. I'm not saying you can't enjoy it, feel free to do so, but it does not make it a lore-accurate series, and to me the lore is just another way of saying the truth. To me it's important to honor Tolkien's vision and story, and not simply steal his work to earn a dime, or spread your own political propaganda. So I'm not simply hating on the series, but I do think the series is dishonoring the memory of Tolkien and goes against what he wanted. That is why I care, and why I feel compelled to tell the true story, as Tolkien envisioned it in his writing. So it's not about hating the series, it's about loving Tolkien. So today we'll do a breakdown of each storyline we know so far. This is based on what happened in season 1, and what we can tell and guess based on the teaser and the behind the scenes video released so far. So let's get into it and start by looking at the storyline of the Harfoots. Luckily this storyline seems to have been reduced a lot in this season. It was without doubt some of the most meaningless and pointless parts of season 1. So far all we got to see was Nori and the stranger walking in presumably the east. Now I'm still convinced the stranger is Gandalf, as they took a lot of lines from him and used in season 1. Not to mention his connection to the hobbits now. As I also mentioned in the previous video, Gandalf never went east. It's one of the few places he never went to, according to himself. Likely because it's where Sauron was strongest. Could the stranger be one of the blue wizards then? Well, it doesn't really matter, at least lore-wise, as there are 2 in the lore, and they didn't journey east near the end of the Second Age, but instead in the middle, or during the Third Age, depending on which version you go with. If you want to know that full story in detail, check out the video in the corner. Now Nori, or wannabe Frodo as I call her, does it make sense having a Harfoot in the east? No. First of all, because it's the Second Age, and we first learn about the hobbits around 1000 in the Third Age. But secondly, because she's a Harfoot. Had she been a Fallowhide, I think it would have made just slightly more sense, as they are the ones described to be the most adventurous. Harfoots, on the other hand, are the least nomadic type of hobbit breeds there are. They were said to settle in one place and remain there, which makes sense given the fact they were the ones building smeals, the hobbit holes, not something you easily build. Her close friend Poppy will apparently also return, and likely be the wannabe version of Samwise. We recently also got an article from Vanity Fair revealing Tom Bombadil will be in the second season of The Rings of Power, except the only thing correct is his blue jacket and him wearing a hat. It lacks a feather though, but I wouldn't call that bright blue either. He certainly doesn't look like a merry fellow, and there's no evidence he ever lived in the desert somewhere in Rhûn. In fact, I don't think he moved much around after he settled in the old forest, which might have been even before men awoke in the east. At least they are more open about him being altered here. But then why add him at all? If you change the character, it's no longer Tom Bombadil, so what's the point? Also, if the stranger is indeed Gandalf, this also seems to contradict what Tolkien wrote, as Gandalf and Bombadil only seems to have met once, and that was near the end of the Return of the King. Or that's at least how many interpret it. It is possible they met in the Third Age, as Gandalf seems to know him well, but we can't tell for certain. Now there's also a rumor about Tom Bombadil in the show, that he is truly Morgoth, and that Goldberry, his wife, is actually Ungoliant. I certainly hope this is not true and just one of the false rumors going around, because that's going to be one of the dumbest theories out there about his true identity. So to conclude for this storyline, there's nothing lore accurate. Let's move on to the storyline on Numenor. So let's start by talking about this shot with Elendil. I assume it's meant to show the tensions between the King's men and the faithful,
But it could also simply be people that oppose Ar-Pharazôn taking power. That feels more likely in my mind. I've heard a few say it's the civil war in Numenor, as Amazon do have the rights for that. But if so, that's not law accurate, as it happened when Tar Palantir became king, not when he died. So my bet is Ar-Pharazôn taking power and becoming king. Not really a civil war though. At least that did happen in the books, but I doubt he will forcefully marry Miriel, who isn't law accurate either, both because she's described as fair of face, and she wasn't blind, like in the show. By the way, how can she go down the stairs without assistance? I guess we shouldn't ask too many questions, just like season 1. Several people have pointed out that it looks like her being sacrificed to the sea monster, and I do say sacrificed, that she's chained up. While it is true there were human sacrifices on Numenor, it's very important to point out it was while Sauron was there, corrupting Ar-Pharazôn, and that those sacrificed were of the faithful, and certainly not Miriel, and if memory serves, it happened only in the Temple of Melkor, built in Amenilos, which we haven't seen yet in the show either. But yeah, Miriel wasn't sacrificed. In fact, she was one of the last, if not the last, on Numenor to drown in the waves that swallowed the island. So if this is Miriel, she shouldn't die so early in the story. Though to be fair, the entire timeline is messed up, taking events from the middle of the Second Age and the end of the Second Age, and then just mixing it together. Let's talk a little about the great eagle we see in the teaser. It's true that a pair of eagles lived atop the King's Tower in Amenilos. However, that was in the early history of Numenor, not the late history. After Tar and Kaliman, they didn't live in Amenilos, as he was hostile to the Valar. But perhaps this eagle is from Meneltama, the Great Mountain. During the 3 yearly events taking place atop the mountain, where the king would speak and praise Eru, there would be eagles flying around. However, that doesn't happen either during the reign of Ar-Pharazôn. The eagles are associated with Manwë, and the king's men are disassociated with him, and with the other Valar. So it makes no sense for the eagle to help Ar-Pharazôn in any way. Some have speculated that it looks like he's about to kill it, which could be seen as a direct message to Manwë, but it would feel odd in the show, as we don't get that connection at all. Manwë isn't even mentioned so far. Others point to the fact this might just be a cheap copy of this shot of Daenerys from Game of Thrones. That seems more likely to me. But let's see what happens. I guess this is Aaron Ruth, by the way, and it also looks pretty close to the concept art, so that's cool at least. Let's move on to the storyline of Eregion. Let's first address the elephant in the room, the wig. I honestly thought it was just me that thought it looked off, but the comment section below the teaser seems to think the same. I really don't hope a wig and some pointy ears will be enough to trick the elves a second time and allow Sauron into Eregion. It's a bit unclear, just based on the teaser, but I really hope not, as it would make them seem incredibly stupid. Mostly because he has the same exact face, and Galadriel already knows he is Sauron. Didn't she tell Celebrimbor? Or just, anyone? I got no idea, but it seems dumb not to mention it. Even if she didn't, shouldn't he be surprised to see Hildebrandt again, now with long blonde hair and pointy ears? It just doesn't work if he wants to trick them and disguise himself. But is it lore accurate? Well, obviously not. But let's take a look at each element and break it down. Let's start talking about the actual rings of power. So, in the lore, Sauron tricks the jewelsmith of Eregion, the Gwaith Myrdain, and their leader Celebrimbor into making the rings of power, or the Great Rings. These include the ones later given to men and dwarves, along with the lesser rings. We don't know much about those though. But it's important to remember here that none of these rings were made for anyone else. They were all made for the elves. After these 16 rings of power are made, Annatar departs Eregion as Sauron. Then 90 years later, yes 90 years later, Celebrimbor creates the 3 elven rings, which are the only ones we get to see created in the show, and apparently Hildebrandt Sauron is part of it, and teaching him basic smith techniques. So the exact opposite of the lore. Now there's another very important detail here. These 3 rings, we don't know the original holders, but they must have been elves in Eregion, unless Celebrimbor used all 3 himself. 10 years after that, Sauron forges in Urodruin the One Ring, and it is then that the elves wearing the rings hear his voice. It is only then his identity is revealed, and they take off the rings, unlike in the show where they seem to do the opposite. And you might think it speeds up after that, but no. In the lore, it is first 93 years later, Celebrimbor decides he must hide the 3 rings. So he gives Nenya to Galadriel, and then we have 2 different versions for the others. In one version, he gives both to gil-galad, and in the other version, it's gil-galad and Círdan. Then 2 years more pass until Sauron invades Eregion, and 2 more years before Eregion is sacked and Celebrimbor is tortured and killed. So from Annatar's departure from Eregion to the death of Celebrimbor, 197 years pass. Or so it is in the lore at least. So yeah, in regards to the timeline, this show is completely off and it has nothing to do with the lore. Simple as that. We do see this shot of Eregion being besieged. I am tempted to say Ostin-Ethel, but I don't think they used the name of the city in the series. In the text, the word siege is never used, but I think it's a fair assumption given how long the war takes. So yeah, not a quick siege like we see it here anyway. Now, before Sauron even reached Eregion, he is attacked by an elf with a small force of warriors. An elf not even present in the series yet, Celeborn. And this host of elves defeated the first wave of Sauron's army. So yeah, maybe we'll see him, but it is super weird we haven't seen him so far, when in the lore he lived with Galadriel in Eregion for a very long period. But apparently he died, or so she thinks at least. So I guess we will have a surprise there. It is at least rumored that he will appear in season 2. And what about their daughter then, Galadriel? She haven't appeared either, and it feels like she might be cut from the entire series altogether. So on to one of the burning questions. Did Sauron look like Annatar when he attacked Eregion? No, of course not. Just think about it. It's a disguise he used to trick them. They already know it's him. And why would he use a disguise if he's going to attack? I mean, it's not like you can march an entire army of thousands of orcs from one place to another without getting noticed. Oh wait, yeah, they already did that in season 1. I guess you can do that. Just teleport thousands of troops from one place to another without being seen. Let's see what the text in the Unfinished Tale says. When Sauron learned of the repentance and revolt of Celebrimbor, his disguise fell and his wrath was revealed. And gathering a great force, he moved over Calenathan, Rohan, to the invasion of Eregion in the year 1695. So to conclude, no, Sauron didn't wear a wig into battle, and he didn't look like Annatar when he sacked Eregion. Now during the attack we also see a desperate Celebrimbor that seems to be destroying some rings. That seems logical, right? Well, it's the opposite of the law, yet again. They should have destroyed all the rings of power at the time, but they failed to find the strength. Galadriel counseled him that the 3 rings of the elves should be hidden, never used, and dispersed far from Eregion, where Sauron believed them to be. So yeah, even if they wanted to destroy them, they simply couldn't find the strength, as we can read. Apparently, Celebrimbor didn't read the books here. But what about Galadriel and Elrond? We also seen the teaser. Well, once again, we see her turned into a warrior, although she is never said to have been a warrior. I already commented on the fire arrows. Let me just say it simply, I don't like them, or believe them to be very effective. And certainly not explosive. Sure, it could be a weird cut, but it does look like she has explosive arrows. They get one thing right here though, lore-wise at least. Her hair. From letter 348 we learned this. She was then of Amazon disposition, and bound up her hair as a crown when taking part in athletic feats. Is it athletic feats to fight in combat? Well, seems valid enough. And what about Elrond? Well, first of all, you need to wear a helmet to protect your face. But not a helmet like this. I know they do this so we can better see the face of the actor, but it's a terrible design with 0 functionality. But is he commanding the forces of Gil-galad as mentioned in the lore? Well, let's hope so, but rumors tell he is leading these riders to rescue Galadriel. Yeah, just more stuff made up which doesn't happen in the books. What a surprise. A lot of people have been guessing what these creatures might be, barely seen in the teaser, and there's some stuff in the behind the scenes that show just a bit more but without the effects. Or so we assume at least. Could it be the men turning into wraiths? Or is it barrow rights? Well, the addition of Tom Bombadil Makes it more plausible it could be Barrow-wites, but that would be lore inaccurate, as you guessed. Those were first around until the Angmar Wars around the mid-Third Age. If it's the Ring Wraiths, it seems a bit strange. The men that accepted the rings didn't immediately turn into wraiths, but then again, if this is meant to be the end of the Second Age, they would have been around. Yeah, it just doesn't add up when you mix the timeline, doesn't it? I guess Sauron created 9 rings on his own and gave them to men? It doesn't work with the lore. But what about Lindon? Well, the giant tree, which I suppose is a Malon tree, is still dying. As I pointed out in Season 1, there are no Melian, aka Malon trees, in Lindon. So again, a contradiction. It almost seems like they're aiming for it at this point. And then we have this dreadful wig for gil-galad. What is going on here? I mean, I know a lot of people complained about the hair of the elves of Season 1, but if you're going to give them wigs, could you please do it right then? I mean, what is this? Anyway, we also have what seems to be Huans attacking Lindon for some unknown reason. Now, that's a very odd choice, and I highly doubt Huans would work together with orcs. Just think about it. They are very destructive in nature and cut down trees for their industry. It seems to ring a bell, but maybe you can help me out here. And what's going on in Khazad-dum then? Well, everything seems to indicate the Balrog awakes, which as many know is lore inaccurate as well. That first happened in the mid-Third Age, actually only 6 years after the Kingdom of Arnor fell. So yeah, there still shouldn't be a Balrog in this series. But, you know, it is cool, so I guess we all saw it coming that they would include it. Then we have this black goo that mostly reminds me of Venom or some alien from a sci-fi film. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it doesn't really fit the description from the lore, though I guess it could be a nameless thing. It seems to be the best bet I have. We should also talk about Durin the Third taking a ring. In one version in the lore, he is given the ring by Sauron, like all the other dwarf lords, while in another version, he is given the ring by Celebrimbor. The former seems most likely here, but it wouldn't surprise me if they come up with a third option that just goes against both versions from the lore. After all, that seems to be what they're aiming for. Lastly, in Khazad-dum, we see this in the behind the scenes video. It's already hinted to that they will sing to stone, which is not mentioned in the lore at all, but this doesn't look like a stone. It looks more like a palantir, and none of those were ever in Khazad-dum, and certainly not before the sinking of Numenor. It also looks like they take some inspiration from Peter Jackson again, but maybe that's just me. Let's hope it's not a palantir. That would be very law-breaking yet again. It has nothing to do with Tolkien, this series. It's a bad joke at this point. The last storyline we'll discuss is in Mordor. First we see Isildur in Mordor, and yes, as everybody knows, he didn't die. He seems to encounter some orcs while being there, and also teams up with Arondir. And in this season, Arondir will be without his lover, unless they find a replacement for her. It wouldn't surprise me, but who knows. It seems like the actors are leaving this project pretty fast, so let's see how many are left by season 5, if we get so far. I still hope Amazon will lose too much money and cancel this series, but that's just wishful thinking, I guess. The actor that played Adar in season 1 quit not long after the season ended, and now we finally see his replacement. I think most prefer the older actor, and he certainly was one of the better things in season 1, but far from enough to save the show. I'm not sure what his role will be, but he doesn't seem to be a friend of wannabe Sauron. What's up with that orc, by the way? That is clearly a mask. It certainly doesn't look very good. But back to Isildur. In the lore, he never gets lost in Mordor, but one thing that do seem lost is his brother Anarion. In the lore, these two brothers are very close, so it's a real shame he hasn't been there so far, as he'll end up dead. But then again, I guess it's good they haven't butchered him yet, at least lore-wise. Rumors have it that Anarion won't even be in this season, so at the end he will just pop up and die, I guess. The last shot we see in the teaser is this fortress, which by the looks seems to be transforming the landscape. It mostly reminds me of Khazad-dum, but I doubt it is. Some think it's Barad-dûr, but that also seems a little off to me. But let me know in the comments what you believe. Special thanks to all the Patreon members and members here on YouTube. You help the channel stay alive and help me continue defending the lore. If you want to see more videos like this, feel free to check out this playlist. Thanks for watching and being part of the Council of the Rings. Farewell till next time.